to look at the building environment, the built environment moving quickly. Aberdeen in 2004, 2005 built 28,000 homes in a year, but 10 years later it built just 17,000 homes in a year. This has a huge impact on retention and recruitment, which in one study of Aberdeen business leaders was said to be the biggest concern. We just can't retain the students. We can't recruit enough because we can't retain the right kinds of students. 43% graduate retention rate is the last figure I saw, 2014-15. That was the last research made available to me. 43% is sort of in the middle of the UK's ranking levels. And I think, given that we have two very good universities, Robert Gordon and Aberdeen University here, we can probably lift our game in that area. This is very important to millennials, as you'll see in the second session, because millennials have lower earnings than their parents. The first generation since the Second World War where that is the case. 30% lower than Generation X at the same age. And San Francisco, a major innovation hub, ladies and gentlemen, a place known the world over for encouraging and inspiring innovation and attracting young people since the 60s, has just recently learned an important lesson that we need to take heed of. Just recently, San Francisco has started bleeding people. In the last quarter of 2017, 24,000 people net left San Francisco for the first time in its recent history. It had more people leaving the city proportionately than any other city, including New York City in the USA. And the lesson was simply this, that for all the sexy, cool technology in the world, if you can't put a roof over someone's head, they're not going to stick around. And so we need to be aware of this housing shortage. And although it may not seem at the level for you as it is in London, and it isn't, it's still important if we're to be an innovation hub. Brisbane in Australia, I was there just a few months ago, has just completed the world's tallest timber office building. It's not just how much we build, but what we build with that counts. If we're going to bring the cost of housing down and the cost of building down, we need to start looking at some new alternatives. Timber might be one. Some architects, my background is in architecture. Some architects now talk about timber as the wonder material of the 21st century. They're talking about cross-laminated timber, which is different streams of grain at 90 degrees to one another. This particular technology allows us to build on sites that are quieter and cleaner, are less polluted, is faster construction in most instances, and they have fewer workers involved. And yet, these buildings made of timber meet all the seismic and thermal and acoustic regulations required of most developed world governments. Fire is interesting because although the timber burns, it chars on the outside. This particular type of timber chars on the outside, retaining its core strength for a great length of time. So the building doesn't just collapse, as you would expect in historical terms when it comes to timber. We need to start looking too at some of the cool high-tech building mechanisms that are available now. I won't go through too many today, but just mention one, transparent wood, which sounds like a contradiction in terms, transparent timber. But now the technology exists for us to strip lignin from the wood and replace it with a synthetic polymer so that 1 millimetre strips of this material become completely transparent. And yet, they retain all the strength and thermal qualities of wood. Now imagine what that means to a large pane of glass that we see on many office buildings now. Having the thermal capacity and more strength than glass, and yet being completely transparent. We need to look at open source housing design. In London, just last year, the first 2-storey wiki house was built. The wiki house idea has been around for a couple of years now, a few years now. It simply means shared designs online, which are downloaded and produced using plywood and a version of a 3D printer. So anybody in the third world can build these. Any councils now use them in the third world to build temporary, and in some cases permanent housing. Cheap, quick, affordable. We need to start looking at whether there are opportunities for that even in cities like Aberdeen. Parametric brick designs are coming out of Iran now. These are houses built with walls that have these sort of parametric wave pattern walls and fences. It's kind of aesthetics for people on a budget. And they're built using design shared online, downloaded to an industrial bot on site who builds the wall. And believe it or not, it's much cheaper that way than building with human labour. Am I saying we want to put brickies out of a job? Absolutely not. Some friends of mine have been brickies. What I'm saying is we need to be aware of the alternatives.